Hi, we are live on Facebook. Good evening. Welcome to the 2020 Quarantine Book Club's live Q&A with author Lainey Cameron, author of The Exit Strategy. My name is Pamela Scholzbeck, and my co-host this evening is Susan Harper, and we're going to be chatting with Lainey about her book and our tech people who really make this happen, because I am technologically challenged as the Passionistas Project. Nancy is my sister-in-law, and her sister Amy are the people that make this work, because I'm not that kind of person. So today's live event is hosted by Amy and Nancy Harrington, sisters who founded the Passionistas Project to inspire women to follow their passions. The project features a podcast, live events on their Facebook group, and the Passionistas Project Pack, a quarterly subscription box filled with products from women-owned businesses and female artisans. They are currently taking orders for the winter box, which ships just in time for the holidays. Go to thepassionistasproject.com for more information about the box and all of the Passionistas projects. And Amy or Nancy, if you'll put that link in our discussion on the Facebook page, that would be awesome. Good evening, Lainey. You're coming here all the way from Mexico, so welcome. Technology is just so wonderful, so thank you for joining us. So I'm going to ask you the questions that I ask of everybody, but first, sorry, it's been a while since I've done this. I'm going to read Lainey's bio. It's been a month. It just seems like forever, but we're not.
It's been the longest month in history.
Hey, we're here to have fun tonight. I'll say cheers. Yeah. I know you've got your wine there too, Pam. Okay. Pamela. So
I forgot my wine.
Cheers. We're just gonna have some fun with this.
Okay. Lainey Cameron is an author of women's fiction and a recovering tech industry executive. Her award-winning novel, The Exit Strategy, a #1 Amazon bestseller. Yep, there it is.
There it is.
By a decade of being the only woman in the corporate boardroom. It's been called a rallying call for women to believe in themselves and join together. Hallelujah. A digital nomad, meaning she picks locations around the world to live and write for months at a time. Lainey is an avid Instagrammer and loves to share her travel tips and insights with readers. She loves to connect with readers at laineycameron.com. She also hosts an interview series with her favorite authors called The Best of Women's Fiction, is a proud member and volunteer with Women's Fiction Writers Association, is highly engaged, and I can attest to that fact, with the 2020 debut group of authors, and believes community, excuse me, makes the author's life worthwhile, because writing really is a lonely business. She's also on a mission to obliterate the term aspiring writer. Originally from Scotland, Lainey has a soft spot for kilts, good malt whiskey, and anything equine. Did I pronounce that correctly? Equine?
I think Brits and Americans pronounce it differently. I think it's equine in the UK and equine in the States, maybe?
I don't know. So
I think so.
Equine, tomato.
Same. Horses, donkeys,
donkeys.
Yeah, no, I'm into donkeys. Like, there's so many cute donkeys here in Mexico. So, like, and they have
I
flowers.
love donkeys.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a donkey rescue, and I'll talk to you about that later.
And where is the donkey rescue?
In South Lake.
Ooh.
Really?
It's in South Lake. I could go work there. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. All right. Donkey rescues in South Lake, which is a totally posh area in Texas. I've rescued donkeys.
We have a very sad unemployed donkey a few doors over from our house right now. No joke, because this town normally does a ton of weddings. And of course, we're not doing big weddings right now because of COVID, as we shouldn't be. And so this poor donkey that normally carries he's called the tequila donkey. He normally carries the tequila and some baskets on his shoulders. And he's part of the wedding parade. Well, he hasn't been working. So you can hear him like all day. This poor donkey is like, I'm bored. Somebody come talk to me.
I need tequila.
He just wants tequila. Yeah.
Poor donkey.
Well,
how did you get to talk about donkeys, right?
We can talk about donkeys, but I want to say that Lainey's website is really good. I have enjoyed your website, and it was a pleasure to explore that. So I hope everybody that's listening will give it a look. And I also want to say, Lainey, thank you for interacting with us on our Q&A as we were discussing your book on the group page. That was really nice. I appreciate you doing that. It
I'm
always
just
seems
so
to.
touched that people read the book and that they were giving feedback on it. And it's just been an amazing experience since it came out in July to, you know, you work so long on something, right? Everybody who's worked on a novel knows that this is not a, you know, it's not like the movies, right? Where someone sits down and types at a keyboard and then like prints it out and gives it off to an agent and ta-da, your book's in the world, right? Like there's
No.
20 revisions and there's finding an agent and there's finding a publisher and there's all these things. And so for us, for all the debut authors, once it actually gets into readers' hands and people are reviewing it and people are reading it, it's just amazing. It's so fun. And they see things that you didn't. And you're like reading your own reviews going like, wow, I never thought of that. Wow, that's really clever. Wow, I never knew that. So
Did I write this book?
did I write this book? So I'm so grateful for everybody who's read this book, especially people who take the time to review it, because it's not easy, right? We're all so busy. Taking time to write a review it's a thing. And so it really helps. Like I'm writing my second one right now. And when I'm having a day where I'm like, uh-oh, do I know what I'm doing? I'll go read the reviews. I'm like, okay, I did it once. I can do this again. I can.
Yes, you
Yeah,
can.
and I think people about reviews, and then I'll let you get, I know Pamela wants to do the questions, but on reviews, I think people feel so uptight about writing a review, and they don't want to be reviewed themselves for their review. So I think it was you, Pamela, who told me just anything, just write anything. Don't worry about it. A few sentences. It doesn't have to be the New York Times review. Just
No.
say what you thought, favorite
the
part,
advice-
and get it out there.
Exactly. The advice
algorithms.
I give people is yeah, numbers really help. That's the algorithm. But also just like imagine you were talking to your buddy about the book. If you were trying to describe to a good friend what that book is like, what's really helpful is to say the tone of the book. You don't have to repeat the whole plot. People think they have to do this amazing plot summary of a book in order to do a review, and you can,
Right.
but you can just say like, it's really upbeat and uplifting, or it's all about friendship, or I really enjoyed how funny it was. It made me laugh. Like actually that really helps other readers know the tone of a book, because that's the biggest thing is people are trying to judge, is this the kind of thing I want to read right now? And so just like they were describing it to a friend works fine.
Yeah, I mean, you do the little elevator pitch, you know. I really enjoyed this book. It's about, you know, female empowerment and sticking it to the man.
You're talking about my one now.
Okay, Lainey. So when did you start writing this book?
About 5 years ago, I think now. It took me about 4 years end to end to write it and get it to the point that it was going to be published. But I think it's about 5 years since I started. Like, it was actually, yeah, it would be 5 years in January. I just finished my last startup job, which was one of those super stressful 80-hour a week jobs in tech where you're flying all over the place and you kind of can't remember where you woke up in the morning, and it's super stressful. And I was at that point where I was like, I'd been saying for a very long time, I'm going to write a book someday. You know, I'm going to write a novel someday. And I finished with one job and I thought, you know, if I don't just sit down and do this, I'm never going to do it. I'm going to be in my 80s saying, you know, I had an idea for a book one day and I never get to it. And so I gave myself 6 months. I said, I am going to give myself 6 months to write this first draft before I go back to probably my day job in marketing. And after 6 months, I was actually right on the edge of thinking like, okay, probably time to go back to the day job. And it won an award. And that was actually what kept me going, because I was like, okay, maybe I can do this. You know, I'm new to it, but maybe if I study really hard and I learn the craft and I learn all the things I need, maybe I can do this. And so I think now in January coming, it'll be 5 years ago. And one of the things that my husband and I did, because you know, I'm not making any money while I'm writing a book. And let's be honest, a lot of people don't make that much money after a book comes out. You know, it's a common popular myth that books are, you know, money makers for authors. Most people do this for the passion rather than the money of it. You know, if you were in it to make money, it might not have been the smartest choice, because there's many better or easier ways to make money than writing and publishing a novel. Let me assure you. But where was I going with that? I got off on money and I
Okay.
How long it took you to write the book?
5
How long
years
did
to
we
write the book.
5 years. 5 years to write the book.
So why did you want to write? Because as we know, it's not like the most lucrative career path to become a writer. Did you start writing when you were younger and like just had a journal or something like that? Or did you go, you know what, I have a story to tell and I really just want to tell it?
It was the second, the latter. I had a story to tell and I wanted to tell it. I used to do writing for marketing. My career was in marketing. And so I would do like copywriting and creative and ads and that kind of stuff. But in terms of long form writing, the odd white paper maybe, but not like a book, like a novel, like storytelling. I hadn't even done that kind of storytelling since I was maybe in elementary school. And so this was a whole learning the craft thing for me. And I remembered what I was going to say earlier is, one of the results of not making money as an author is that's why my husband and I became digital nomads, because we needed to find somewhere cheaper to live. And so that's why we've been living in different locations for the last 4+ years.
Yeah, San Francisco isn't the most inexpensive place to live. I lived there for 11 years and I had to leave because it was so darn expensive.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of craft, how did you learn your craft? Books? Did you join writers groups or did you learn?
I love talking about this, and I've written a little bit about this in some blog posts too. So the first thing I did is something I don't recommend to anybody. I'm like a data person. I love to absorb data. So I went out and I read like every craft book I could put my hands on. Like no joke, I probably read like 40 different craft books. It's a terrible idea. Don't do it, people. It will freeze you in your you'll just be right where you are, frozen in place, because there's all these rules in the craft books, right? Don't dump backstory, don't start in the past, don't start with a dream, don't have too much internal dialogue. So basically I started scratching things in my manuscript. Okay, can't have that, can't have that, can't have that. And there was nothing left. My book is full of internal dialogue. And so I realized pretty fast that trying to obey all the craft books and all the rules was a terrible idea. And all it was doing was I might as well just have set the book on fire. Like there was nothing left by the time you obeyed every rule. My book opens with someone in her office on her own. It's actually high drama because she's in this high stakes situation where she's working out that she's about to walk into the meeting with her husband's mistress. But that's one of the rules on what you're not supposed to do. You should never open with a character on their own in the room. And I tried it lots of different ways, but none of the other ways were as dramatic as jumping the reader straight into her head, where the reader understood what was happening and what she was about to do walking into this meeting, and giving the reader that context of why it was a big deal, which could only come from her. It would have taken me chapters of dialogue to explain it. And so, sometimes those roles are only there to get you to think about stuff, as opposed to tell you you may not do this. Absolutely. Right. And so I did book coaching for about a year. That really helped me. A book coach is someone where you go back and forth with pages. So you send them the scene and then they send it back to you, and then they tell you what you need to work on and they give you some tips and hints, and then you send it back again. And sometimes you'll rework the same scene 5 or 6 weeks in a row as you're learning the skills of how to pace, how to enter a scene, how to exit a scene, how to leave a cliffhanger, that kind of thing. So that was really helpful to me. I did book coaching through Author Accelerator. It's Jenny Nash's organization, and now she teaches a ton of other book coaches. So there's a lot of people out there who've been taught with that method, and that was helpful for me. It wasn't enough. I still had a lot to learn, but it helped me kind of get off to a fast start.
So we had a question from one of the people. Let's see who
Denise.
Was it? Okay, no, it's Marilyn. This question relates to what we're talking to right now.
Oh.
What are your top 5 craft books that you would recommend that you read? What was helpful to you?
I'm looking at the shelf behind me because right over there's actually some of them. Okay,
Let's see what's on Lainey's shelf.
Most recently, and I don't have a paper copy of this one yet, I'm still waiting for it to get here. Intuitive Editing by Tiffany Yates Martin. The reason I recommend that one is I really knew it came out in the last year, and I was lucky enough to actually be a beta reader for it, which was pretty weird being a beta reader for a craft book. It was kind of meta, right? Editing a book about editing. But it was, what I love about her book is exactly what I was just saying. She doesn't say, here's all the rules and you must not break them. She actually says, here's how to get that story that's in your head onto the page. And she identifies the reasons you struggle between, hopefully people have seen the memes where it's like, what you envisage is the dragon roaring fire, and what you have is the stick man with a little thing in his mouth, right? Like, how do you go from the thing that's in your head and get it on the page in the right way? And she's really good at that. That's kind of her skill set. So that's most recently my favorite. I also love Story Genius. And there's one that Jen Lisa Cron and Jennifer and Jenny Nash did together. It's this follow-on to Story Genius, but it takes it and makes it much more practical and gives you examples. If you look up Story Genius, you'll find it. They're both very related. It's a kind of a part one and a part
That's a
two.
NaNoWriMo book, isn't it? Story Genius, or am I making that up in my head?
It gets used by a lot of people for NaNoWriMo because it has a framework for how to think about what's happening in your. It starts with kind of like, what's the point? And then it says like, what's a character going to learn or what's going to change in their kind of frame of reference by the end of the scene. So it's kind of a way of thinking about mapping out scenes, which some people do for NaNoWriMo and some people don't. Some people just do what's called pantsing and just write it as they go. I also love exactly. I'm kind of halfway between. I've discovered that the more that I try to plot it out, the more I hate it and just want to burn it and give up on it. So I'm not a total plotter. I'm a little bit halfway. What do you call that? A plantser, between a pantser and a plotter?
Yeah, a plantser. Yeah.
The Fire in Your Fiction by Donald Mass is fabulous about getting emotion on the page. Big fan of that one too. And I don't have a copy of this anymore because I loaned it to someone, but if you're starting out, the Dummy's Guide to Fiction Writing is fabulous, and it's not condescending at all. And it goes through all of the stuff about backstory, all the stuff you'll hear people say and not really understand. Like, what do they mean when they say I'm dumping backstory? It'll give you like an example and say like, this is what that looks like. But it's also not so rule centric either. It's like, this is something you should be aware of and you can decide whether you want to go with it. So I recommend that to a lot of people who are just starting out.
Cool. So where did the idea for this book come from? Well, we know you have a tech background, and the cheating.
Yeah, it started with a very clear scene, and it was one scene, and I had this idea in my head that the wife was going to pick up the phone and call the mistress, and the mistress wasn't going to know that she is the mistress of this wife. She was going to think she was on her way to getting married to him. And that was the kind of scene I had in my head. Originally, at one point, that was the first scene in the book, but there wasn't enough background for it to make any sense to anybody. And then from there, I kind of said, well, what if the women had to work together? What if after that phone call, they couldn't just walk away and, never want to see each other as you would as a human, but they were forced to see each other every day? And then I said, okay, what kind of job or what kind of situation would make it such that they were forced to keep working with each other? What would that look like? And so from there, I built the story of what was Ren's job. She's a venture capitalist. She's invested in Carly's company. What was Carly's job? She's the CEO of that company. She's invested 7 years in it. She can't just walk away from 7 years in a company she created. And so like from there, it kind of built out and out and out.
Cool. Now, how did you get an agent for this manuscript or not?
I didn't. In fact, I queried 130. God, I had 135 rejections from agents before I queried small presses. And it was a really interesting learning experience, both in how the publishing world works, but also in resiliency and not giving up. And how the publishing world works is when you have a book, an agent's going to look at, are there similar books that sold in the past? Is there a similar book to this that a publishing house, a big publisher bought? And because this book is kind of the first one to tackle these topics and to be about friendship and Silicon Valley and women empowering each other, there's not a comp out there. And so agents gave me this wonderful feedback. By the end of the 135 rejections, it pretty much was, I love the book. It's a page turner. I really enjoyed it, but I'm not going to offer you representation. What do you do with that? And so that was where I turned to small publishers. I applied to 6 and I got several offers within 2 months. So it was fascinating after so much rejection to suddenly have choices. I was like, wow, that was not expected.
Yeah. And most people, that's the thing. What makes a writer a writer? Well, first you have to write. I mean, that's kind of, you can call yourself a writer just by simply writing. But most people just give up because it's like this business is all about getting rejected and going, you know what, I believe in myself and I'm not going to give up. I mean, my writers group, every week they ask who submitted something, who got rejected. And when everyone or people raise their hand who got rejected, we applaud that because that means you have submitted something. Yay. And just because you're rejected doesn't mean diddly, because this is a very subjective business, Yeah. Some people totally can go, this is awesome. And some people are like, Yeah.
Yeah. And also don't let someone else tell you that your work isn't worth being in the world. right? Like I had various agents, especially younger agents, who were like, "Oh, this book, like you got a CEO with imposter syndrome. There's no way that's possible. No successful woman could ever have imposter syndrome." And I'm like, "You haven't met my friends. What are you talking about, you 24-year-old agent? Like, God bless. One day you'll get there and be successful yourself, and maybe you'll understand this." But so like sometimes people just didn't get my book, right? They weren't the audience for my book. And so you also have to kind of have enough confidence in yourself and your work and your audience to not listen when someone tells you, that shouldn't be in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. The first time I ever, it was the Query Gong show at a writers conference. And so they read the query, and I, I remember one agent was like, no, 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 no one's ever going to want to read a book about a menopausal vampire.
But it's
Never.
awesome.
See, but if I would have listened to that and gone, yeah, you're right, no one will, then I would have stopped, and just never pursued it. So
Let me ask you, the guys banging the gong saying no one's ever going to read that, was it women or men?
It was a woman.
It was a woman. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know who she is. Yeah, one day she'll be sorry. So, okay. So how long did it take you to sell to a publisher? So once you started querying, and then you started querying the small publishing houses, and you got some offers, how long did that process take?
So that went pretty fast once I had the small publisher offers. So that would have been like just last fall. So I had several offers in October last year. And by November, I had decided which one I wanted to go with. And by December, I was working on the edits with my publisher. And
Wow.
then the book came out in July. And actually, it was probably a little longer than average for my publisher. I really wanted to get some things right. And so I kept going back, and we did like even on the copy edits, we did like 3 rounds because I kept still finding things, and I wanted it to be the best it possibly could be on the copy editing. So yeah, they had me do a fun thing where I read the book from the back forwards. And that was a really interesting learning, that if you read paragraph by paragraph from the very end to the beginning, you will find stuff that you missed in the last 10 revisions that you didn't know, like small, tiny stuff.
Yep. I used to be a proofreader for the phone book.
Wow.
Yeah. Talk about a sad job. And I can spot other people's errors like that, but I cannot spot my own. Because our mind will
Right.
fill in what is supposed to be there. And then,
Exactly.
so it takes somebody else. And that's why editors are so important. We love you,
Yeah.
editors.
Yeah.
Yep.
My editor's great. I was so happy. My editor finds so many things for me.
Yep. I love editors. So what did you have planned for your book launch, Lainey?
So I had an idea that I was going to do with a musician called Leah Alonso. She's really fun. She actually, in the end, we did my launch party together online virtually, and she played music, and we made cocktails, and we did fun stuff. But we had this idea, because the women in my book are really, they're badass women. They're dealing with a really difficult situation, and they aren't going to let some guy dictate the rest of their life to them. And so I, not only did I have a little bit of a partnership with the Badass Women's Book Club, which is really fun. If you don't follow them on Instagram, they showcase books with and by badass women. They showcased my book when it came out back in July. So we were kind of going on that badass theme, and we wanted to do something where I just wanted to celebrate getting this book in the world and get together with my friends who are all over the States and all over the world. And so we had this idea that we were going to do a tour, which was basically going to be we were going to call it Books, Brews, and Badass Women. And in each city, it was going to be in a bar, and it was going to have booze, and it was going to be more like a girls' night get together, where we would have book stuff. We would have a little bit of reading. We would have giveaways, but we'd also have live music and fun. And the idea was to invite whichever author friends I had in that local city to join and be part of each event. And so each event would have been different with different local authors that are my women's fiction friends. So it would have been a blast. And we even had it down to like, we'd worked out how we were going to transport the equipment and how we were going to get a minibus, and we had it all sorted out, and then COVID hit.
Oh,
I still say we need do-overs. We get do-overs on this year. Yeah, you get do-overs on your launches. Yeah. I'll come to that one.
Everybody's been like, even though it's all been online, everybody's been so supportive, and I've still been able to bond with the 2020 debut authors and enjoy their books. I've read so many of their books this year, and you know, I'm happy. I'm happy to get my work into the world and start my career as an author. And so, you know, it's easy to, someone asked me the other day, are you an optimist or a pessimist? And I said, I think I'm probably an optimist because I'm probably the person who says the glass is only a quarter full. But how cool is it that we have a whole quarter full of a glass?
Yes, that is correct. 2020 has been a dumpster fire, but you know what? We're making lemonade with those lemons, and that's a really good thing. So Susan, you're going to talk to Lainey about, you had a couple of questions.
Oh, I had a couple, but we've got some good ones over here in the chat. So I thought I want to make sure we get to those. So I'll do mine at the end if we have time.
Okay.
Glad you're here. And Denise has a really good question. She wants to know, was the book about strong women relationships or hating men?
No.
Okay, Denise, you actually get the prize for being the first person to ask me that question, because so I was talking earlier about Jenny Nash, who runs a coaching business. And one of the things she makes you do when you're going through her coaching, she has this one page where she makes you write down, or she doesn't make you, she suggests that you write down the best possible review you would read for your book and the worst possible review that you're worried about getting from your book. And so when I wrote down my worst possible review, it was someone's going to write that I'm a total man hater and that I wrote this book just because I hate all men and I want them all to self-implode or something. And so like, it's funny that this is the first time that's actually come up like live. So no, I'm not a man hater. I've been through some interesting experiences in my life. I've met some people that I wouldn't wish on others. But I'm not a man hater. I actually got married last year and I have a very lovely hubby who is the much better of the two of us. He's very evolved. In fact, I think right now he's upstairs on his men's group talking about his feelings with other men, to give you a sense of like, he is a good guy. He is a really wonderful guy. He's all about authenticity and living his life the right way and truth. And so I am not a man hater at all. In fact, I have one particular man who's upstairs on his men's group that I am particularly fond of, but not a man hater. But I was really afraid that that was going to be the reaction to this book, which to me was a book about women lifting each other up. I kept hearing as I was talking to agents, people would say things like, so it's going to be a revenge novel, right? Because they'd read the little pitch at the beginning of how you describe your book. And they're like, so it's going to be a revenge novel. It's going to be like that movie where all the women team up and like take down the guy. And I really didn't want to write a revenge novel like that, because I felt like that book is about the man, right? If the women spend all their energy teaming up to take revenge on the guy, then the plot still circles around the guy. It's still about him. And I wanted to write a book that was about the women, not the guy.
Yep. The Bechdel test. Y'all know.
Yeah.
Like women, where it's not just about talking, when it's not
they're
about
not talking about
the man. We have another question from Dana Austin. Hi, Lainey. Thanks for speaking tonight. I've experienced a lot of sexual harassment in life. Was this what inspired you to write the story?
Yes, but I'll be honest that I didn't start out thinking, you heard me earlier say I had this image of the wife and the mistress, and that was kind of the seed, the genesis, and it all grew from there. So I didn't start out saying like, I'm going to write a book about sexism. In fact, I started out thinking I'm going to write a book about two women, the wife and the mistress, and challenge myself to say, what would it take for those two women not only to become friends, but to lift each other up by the end of the book? And so that was where I started. That was what I was trying to get to. And then I said, well, where should I set it? And I thought, well, Silicon Valley is where I've worked for the last 20 plus years. So that makes sense. Write what you know. And then I just wrote what I knew in Silicon Valley, and the sexism all just became so pervasive throughout the book that when people repeated it back to me as beta readers and say, whoa, you wrote this book where it's just filled with sexism, I'm actually like, well, that's just life. Like, that's just my experience of life that made it into the book. And so I actually wrote an author's note at the end that by the time I was finished, I actually toned down the sexism in the book. deliberately, because I felt like some of the stuff that I could have put in there, people would have rolled their eyes and said it wasn't credible. And I didn't want the reader to be taken out of the book by feeling like the stuff wasn't credible. And so I actually scaled back some of the sexism in the book. So I can totally relate to what you're saying, that, yeah, wow. Why is the world still like that? Come on, we're in the 2000s, 2020s at this point. It's ridiculous.
Where did you take any part in the Me Too movement at all? Like, did you share your
Nope,
experience?
I supported other women as they were coming forward. I was a very senior executive at a very big company at that point, like billion dollars of company. And so I played a role in supporting other women as they told their stories, but I didn't come forward and talk about like during Me Too myself. No.
Okay, cool. Let's see, we have a comment. Just Amanda said, I'm glad you threw away the rules for the opening. It hooked me and I was so stressed out for that meeting.
Oh,
think
thank
we
you,
all were.
Amanda. And thank you to everybody who's watching. This means the world to me that you guys are taking the time to do this with us tonight.
Yeah, isn't technology wonderful? We can all be together and be socially distant. And okay, and we have another comment from Rachel Kinsler Black. What? No successful CEO would have imposter. My favorite parts. I think women are maybe kind of, I don't know. I certainly have felt like an imposter in a lot of roles
Me
in my
too.
life. So do you want to address the imposter syndrome just in your personal life with your work?
A lot of Rin's mindset, where Rin being the main character, a lot of her mindset where like she's fought so hard to prove herself. That was my experience. I always felt like I had to prove myself, right? That I'd walk into the room and I might be the only woman in the room. And so everything I said had to be sharp and be on point. And I felt like I was being judged at a much higher level than the 10 guys around the table in the room, because I was the only woman. Therefore, and also I was having, I call it emotion overlays. So you have to be really thoughtful at all times of how your emotions are coming across. So, you know, if a guy pounds the table and says like, God damn it, in a meeting, people go, oh, he's angry. If a woman does the same thing, they go, whoa, emotional. Completely different reaction to exactly the same behavior. And so you have to really be like, your brain is always working in two time, right? It's like, what should I say? What's the right thing to do for the business? And how am I going to be perceived when I say it? And how should I say it? So like, whereas the guys in the room are just thinking about what's the right thing to do for the business, I'm sure some of them are also having some of the same thoughts, but I think many of them are just sitting in the meeting going, okay, what's the right answer? The woman in the meeting is sitting there like thinking on these 4 different thought processes and tracks. And so it's not surprising that we're dealing with imposter syndrome, because we're having to over process everything all the time. How are we going to be perceived? You know, if I say this, how's it going to be taken? If you've seen like there's some really great research out there that looks at words that are only used in women's performance reviews and never in men's. And like certain words like aggressive instead of assertive show up again and again in women's performance reviews. And then when you read it and they show the examples of what the person did that was aggressive, it's not, it's just that women did it. And so it was perceived as aggressive. And so, yeah, I think, you know, part of imposter syndrome is we don't have a ton of role models for speaking our truth. Right? Like we're kind of taught to really think about what we're saying and how it's going to be perceived all the time, right? Nice girls don't shout, right? Nice girls don't get angry, right? There's all these messages we're given. And so we're always, from my perspective, kind of over processing all of this before we can talk. And yeah, it's amazing that we're not all like more messed up than we are.
I'm totally messed up. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big woman. I'm 6 feet tall. And so I've always had to minimize myself so I didn't appear like, you know, I am Amazon woman, you know, and I'm so aggressive. You know,
Oh, me, it was like I had the biggest problem with tops, like blouses that looked smart. I have somewhat big boobs, and so like how do I wear something that does not get the attention in the meeting on my boobs? And like, oh my God, like without looking super duper frumpy. Right. So like, oh my God, when I went shopping, like for work clothes, it would be like days worth of trying to find a freaking blouse to wear. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. See? Yeah. Men
Like
don't
talking
have
about
this
overthinking
problem.
it. Men don't worry about
I know because I have kind of big boobs myself. And when I discovered the little tape thing that you can get for a blouse so that you don't like expose yourself, with a button down shirt, it's like the greatest thing ever.
Gape tape.
Yeah, gape tape. Yep.
Gape
there you
tape.
go.
No, I just gave up on button downs. I'm like, I'll only wear like non-buttoned shirts was what I finally concluded. No buttons. Or fake buttons, like fake buttons on top, but not really open.
Right.
Yeah. The things we have to worry about.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. Do you want me to take the next one? I'll do
Go
from
for it.
Linda. She says, I love that they got to know each other, supported each other, and did what was best for them. After all, success is the best revenge. So I was going to say something along those lines. It was a revenge book. They did get revenge.
They did.
And I love that.
They did. They did. And so, yeah, I always hesitate to say it's not a revenge story, but it's not. What's the movie I'm thinking of that has like the three women that all discover that they're with the same guy, and the whole movie, The Other Woman, I think. The whole movie becomes about like revenge, like yeah, it's a balance of how much is what, right?
Yeah.
First Wives Club, that one also.
First
Yes,
Wives, yeah.
yeah.
And even 9 to 5. I mean, going back to totally different. They're not mistresses, but he would have loved it. Let's see. Oh yeah, Rachel responded to the 2 standards for men and women. A woman is abrasive for the same behavior. That would be normal, direct conversation for men.
Right. Yeah.
Abrasive and aggressive. Where? Pamela, I lost it. Okay. The only appropriate cleavage is toe cleavage. Marilyn wants to know if anyone remembers somebody saying that.
Oh, I'll tell you a story about that. So I worked for a very conservative blue chip company, big company. And the day I left that company, so I was from California and I was commuting back and forth to the East Coast, and I would wear sandals. I would wear like high-heeled sandals, like smart work sandals, not flip-flops, but like smart sandals with like maybe like a sling back at the back or like open-toed. I was taken aside so many times by female senior executives to say, you can't show toe cleavage. You can't show your toes. It's not okay. So many times. I mean, at least 20 times over my career. And this tells you that I was a little bit of a rebel because I never stopped wearing my high-heeled sandals. I'm like, screw y'all. So the day that I quit, I actually had a job at a startup. I was going to a new company in Silicon Valley. And so it was kind of a big deal because I knew it was going to be, I was very senior at this point in this big company. And I knew they were going to have like a complete meltdown when I told them. So it happened. I told them, they had a complete meltdown. They walked me out of the building, like literally physically walked me out of the building at 11 in the morning. Cause I told them during my first meeting in the morning. And so 11 in the morning, I'm like, where do I go? I'm like, ooh, DSW. So I went to DSW and bought a bunch of sandals because I knew at my next job, nobody was going to give me a hard time about it.
That's funny. Yes.
Why does it even matter? Gosh.
It's ridiculous. It was
because some man might be turned on because you might have an effect on the men. And it's control. It's control. Yes, Darlene. She said her granddaughters are being taught to not be afraid to speak up for themselves, not abrasively, but not to worry about what others think. Have you noticed that the younger women are being taught differently?
I love this. I love the whole thing about the word bossy, right? That's another example.
Oh, yeah.
A word we apply to little girls and we don't apply to boys, right?
Yeah.
Little girls sounds diminutive, but like girls, right? Elementary school girls are told don't be bossy,
Yeah.
right? And we don't say to boys in the same way, don't be bossy.
We say that's leadership. Those are leadership skills.
Yeah, those are leadership
Yeah.
skills. And so there's a whole movement around not using bossy with girls, which I think is great. There's a study they did which fascinated me, which showed that math and science, they've been trying to work out like, why do so many girls drop out by high school of math and science when they don't have worse grades? They actually have just as good grades, but they're more likely to drop those subjects and not to pursue STEM careers, science and technology careers. And so they've done a lot of studies on why that is. And many of the studies have found this common phenomenon, which fascinates me, which is that girls believe that we have natural abilities. Okay, so this is messages we put in their heads. So if I'm working on a math problem and I'm finding it hard, a girl is going to say to herself, I'm not good at math because it's hard. The boy with the same scenario is going to say, I need to work harder in order to become good at this. Because we give out this message that some things are natural capacities that you have or don't have. And for some reason, girls absorb that message very strongly and believe that if they're struggling with math or science, even though they're getting the exact same grades as the boys, that they're not naturally good at those things. And so they drop them, because who wants to do something that you believe you're not naturally very good at? And it's not true, but it's just that message of like, what makes you good at something is hard work, and it's gonna be hard. Like the way you get good is it's gonna be hard. And for some reason, we weren't giving that message to girls, especially at the elementary and junior high level. And so the result was girls are like, I don't want to do that science thing. I'm not good at it.
Yeah.
We have a good comment. Where did it go? On the topic of female empowerment, did you have any female mentors, or did you mentor younger women? This book was a good reminder to me to do more. Did you have mentors?
Yeah, both. I had both. I had great female mentors. At one point, it's interesting. At one point, I got taken out of a job and put into a much higher promoted job because I was viewed as collaborative. And interestingly, the woman who was in the job, who was taken out of it for not being viewed as collaborative, like really had an axe to grind with me. She ended up being my peer. She went from being like my senior to being my peer. And over many years, she and I like were not in a good situation together, because she felt like I had stolen her career because I didn't do anything. I literally got plucked out like, oh, she knows how to do things. Let's put her in that job. But it was because I was viewed as collaborative, because I was helping. And so I think I've always just liked being able to help other people do the right thing and get the best out of their capacity and their capabilities. And so, yeah, I love that. I mentored, even after living tech for the last few years, I still have a few different people who come to me for mentoring, even though I'm in writer world, it's so different.
But you are of service to so many writers. I mean, I'm a member of the 2020 debut group, and you do so much, and you use your knowledge and skill set to help other writers. And so you're still being not a mentor,
so.
but maybe of service to those people.
Well, I'm thinking about doing one of the things I've been debating this week is maybe doing like a mentoring program for marketing for authors for coming out with their first book, because so many authors are petrified of having to market their books. It's a scary thing to them. And because I came from a marketing background, I just didn't have that same mental like, oh, I don't want to have to do this, you know? And so, you know, there's ways to market your book where you're genuine and authentic and you're not pushy, right? Like there's another word we apply to women more than men, pushy, right? But like people love you being excited about your book, right? When you're excited, they're excited. And it's okay to share your excitement, but there's a difference between like sharing your excitement and being like, you should buy my book because it's so awesome and because I'm the best. Like there's a tone thing there, right? And I think people are so afraid of being that second one of like, you should buy my book because I'm awesome, that they're afraid of marketing in its entirety. And marketing is just sharing what you have with the world.
Yeah, it's really difficult. It's like, and you know, right now, when like we're in a global pandemic and people are, you know, it's like there's so many bigger things than like, oh, buy my book, it just came out, you know. So it feels kind of like, you know.
Yeah, but look at your book. Okay, I'm going to talk about your book for a second now. So Pamela, your book, last 2 weeks, I have really been stressed out, like super duper stressed out, because I've been going through this decision about whether to go back to the San Francisco area for the holidays. I haven't seen my mother since January, actually January 2nd, when she flew back from Mexico to the Bay Area. She's in Santa Cruz, California. She moved there from Scotland so that she could be closer to me when I was living in the Bay Area. And, you know, I haven't seen her for a year almost though. And, you know, I've never been away from my mom for Christmas, which is kind of crazy. I'm in my late 40s. I've never actually not been with my mom at Christmas time. And so for the last 2 weeks, I've really been struggling with that decision. Like, do you take the risk of flying to the Bay Area? But then I don't want to expose her. So probably it means we got to quarantine for 2 weeks after we arrive. And how safe is it to fly and to travel? And Mexico City's not that safe and all of this. And you know what saved me from all of that crazy stress was your dang book. Because I was reading Forever 51, and whenever I was super duper stressed, I would just escape into vampire world and have fun like with Veronica's escapades as she tries to work out how to become mortal again. Like I needed that escapism. That was exactly what I needed in the last 2 weeks as I was stressing. Like we finally booked it like yesterday, the day before, but like for 2 weeks, my husband and I went back and forth every single day. We're going to do it. We're not going to do it. We're going to do it. We're not going to do it. Maybe it's a really bad idea. Are we being unthoughtful? Are we putting everybody else at risk? And so like for 2 whole weeks, we couldn't make a decision between us, and your book was my escape. That was the moments of like not having to think about all the stress.
Well, thank you. And since I lost my mom, in the past month, I say, go see your mom. Go see your mom. Wear a mask. Stay away from her, but be in the same room. Be with her.
That's what we're doing. We booked an Airbnb, a rental for 2 weeks. So basically, we're going to fly there. We're going to go to a place for 2 weeks and quarantine for 2 weeks, and then we'll be with her for 2 weeks after that.
Awesome.
Good.
That's good. And while you're in San Francisco, go to my favorite burrito joint, which is Taqueria Cancun.
Oh, okay. You're going to have to send me that one so I can make sure. Is it in the Mission?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yep. Mojado burrito. It's like my favorite thing. It's like the size of my head, and it's so good.
Well, you know what's funny is what we call burritos in the States, which are these big, baby-sized wrapped things, is not here in Mexico, right? We don't have American burritos here. That's a uniquely Tex-Mex US thing. People think of it as Mexico, but you can't get that here where I am in Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was in
As
Mexico.
a kid, I wouldn't eat burritos. I grew up in
Mm.
Texas and I wouldn't eat burritos because I got it confused with burros, which are donkeys, which takes me back to equine.
And here we're circling back to the
We're
donkeys.
circling back. Yeah. You
360.
did get the equine element there in the end with Rin. So I found that
Yes.
I was so happy for her in the end. We're getting close. I'm watching our time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So that's where that came from then, I guess, your equine love. That
Yes. I
Rin
had a
got
horse. When I was a kid, I was really, really into horses all the way through my teenage years. In fact, I wasn't really into boys until pretty late. And doing writing competitions and yeah.
When did you leave Scotland?
I left Scotland when I was like 17, and I went to France for 2 years and worked as an au pair, looking after someone's kids, and learning French before I went to university for like a year and a half, almost 2 years. There's a long story behind that, but I went to a Catholic high school and they were not willing to let a girl go to university a year early. And so I had to find something I was going to do because I had my qualification. I actually finished high school and they wouldn't let me go. I couldn't get my reference to go to college. So I found a way. I went to France and I spent a year and a half looking after 5 kids. It was insane.
Wow.
Of a doctor's family that were both on call. And then I went to university in England, and then I worked in France, and I actually kept my Scottish. People think I have a Scottish accent. This is not a Scottish accent. This is a mixed up, I don't know what it is accent, but I actually lost my accent when I graduated and I was working in France, and it was in the 1990s. So it wasn't all email yet. We had a lot of phone. And nobody understood anything I said, like nothing, not a word. It was complete, and it was all language. It was 27 countries and languages and currencies. We didn't yet have full European Union or the Euro, and it was complete meltdown. Nobody understood a word I said. I had a really West Coast strong Scottish accent, and so that was when I lost it. Was actually when it was the career. I needed to lose the accent if I wanted to keep the job.
Yeah, my first book, I interviewed a man who was an EMT from Scotland, and I interviewed him for like an hour, and I could not understand a word that he said.
That was me. I have an uncle like that.
I was like, I just did a lot of nodding.
Yeah,
Yep.
Scottish people. There was a guy one time in a bar, and I knew he was speaking English, or he thought he was speaking English, but he was Scottish. I couldn't understand anything he said. He was gorgeous, but I was like, this is not going to be a good date if I go forward with this guy, because it was English, but it was not English.
Well, they're actually applying to get Scots, which is like Scottish derived English, which has a lot of different words, very different words and intonation. They're actually applying to get it approved as a UNESCO heritage language, like as a separate language.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I see that. Okay, let's see if Pamela, are you reading questions?
No, I'm okay.
I got lost there in the,
There's a lot of comments.
there are a lot more comments than,
Dana said, I just drove to Virginia to visit my mom after not seeing her since March. I recommend it. So good on you for,
Thank you, Dana.
for going. Rachel said, thank you, Lainey, Cameron, for engaging with this group during the discussion questions throughout the month and
Yes.
tonight. And okay. Okay, what is it? You have some questions for Lainey, Susan, that
well,
you always
I wanna-
talk to authors
I
about.
always go back to your, to the childhood, but I want to ask one about why, and the spoiler alert, if y'all haven't finished the book and all, spoiler alert, why was the wife in Oklahoma? How did you get the Oklahoma link for him? Is there some story?
It was as simple as he grew up in Oklahoma. That was where he actually grew, the husband actually grew up. And this was his first wife that he had met, that was his sweetheart that he had met in high school, basically.
Did you know about Ada, Oklahoma? Did you know about Oklahoma,
in
or
fact,
did you just pick that out of the blue?
No, in fact, he started in a different place. He wasn't in Oklahoma originally, but towards the end of the book, I wanted them to drive from Austin to somewhere drivable from Austin. And so I think I started him in like somewhere way north. I think he was in Ohio or Montana or somewhere way north. Not Montana, because Ren was from Montana. But and then I realized that didn't work. So I literally was like, Google Maps is amazing. I'm like, okay, I need a city. I need it to be this big. I need it to be this far from Oklahoma City. What have we got? And that's how I landed on where it was.
I just wondered about that. I wondered if there was.
Okay, Peggy wants to know, is there a next book? What are you working on now?
There is. I am doing NaNoWriMo right now, which is November National Novel Writing Month. I'm not doing it the rules way, which would be that you start with a brand new idea on page 1 and word 1. I'm actually doing it as what's called a NaNoRebel, which means you set your own goals for the month. And my goal is to finish the first draft. So I started at around 50,000 words on November 1st. I've been trying to keep the nano word count of doing just over 1,600 words, 1,700 words a day, which I have successfully. I'm right on that curve. I think I was at 77,000 words first draft this month. That's what I'm shooting for.
Good luck.
Okay.
I know what it's about.
Do it. Yeah, what is it about? What is it about?
Sorry, I'm like, I didn't answer the question. If the question is, what is it? Wasn't trying to avoid the question. It is about, so they say everything's inspired from real life, right? So my first book definitely was inspired from my life in Silicon Valley, from my own divorce, from thinking about what would it take if a woman, a wife and a mistress met. This book is about, so I said I've been a digital nomad living in different places for the last almost 5 years. So this is about a digital nomad. She's actually an adventure travel Instagrammer. So she's a big Instagrammer like me, but she does adventure travel. So think of the crazy shots you see of people like jumping off mountains and out of airplanes and skydiving, diving and all the really crazy stuff. That's what she does. And she has a hidden past. She has a dark hidden past. And in the first chapter or 2 of the novel, the thing that she has moved on from, she's living under a different identity. She changed her name. She's living as a completely different person, is back in the news, and someone is threatening to expose her. And so the book is about whether she's going to be able to escape that, but also whether she's going to be able to reconcile her past and who she wants to be going forwards.
And do you have a title, a working title?
The working title is Erasing Grace.
Oh, I like that. Erasing Grace. Okay. Well, my last question, the question that I always have to ask, and we always get it, we haven't gotten it over here yet. If this book gets made into a movie or TV series, who do you cast? Ren and Carly and even Todd.
This one's so
Todd.
I actually have notes here, and here's why is you warned me about this question, thank God, because I'm not a movie TV person. It's interesting. There's one show that I'm binging, which is Jane the Virgin. I'm a big Jane the Virgin fan. It's like my guilty pleasure. She's a writer in the show, and it's silly, and it's a takeoff on telenovelas. So it's making fun of, it's very tongue in cheek, making fun of telenovelas. So I find it very funny when I'm, again, escapism, when I'm looking for escapism. So I actually, on my Facebook page, I asked people a couple of weeks ago, and it's still running. If anyone wants to help me with this, if you go to my Facebook page, it's the pinned post on the top. I'm actually still looking for ideas. I'm going to tell you what people said, but I'm still looking for new ideas, and I'm giving away some Starbucks vouchers and things, some $5 Starbucks to buy yourself a coffee, because I am so lost on this topic that I actually needed help. But I'll tell you the good ones that came through so far on the Facebook page. For Rin, people suggested Kate Blanchett. So I was Googling, looking at photos of her. I can see it. There's a couple where she's a redhead. And then some other people suggested Amanda Peet. So those were two good ideas. I can actually see the actress who plays Jane the Virgin. She plays a younger character in her 20s in that show, but she's kind of petite with big wavy brown hair. I actually could see her playing Carly. I actually could very much imagine her as Carly in her 30s. I looked it up today. She's in her 30s. She's just playing down in that show to kind of 20 something. But other people suggested Rose Byrne. Say Byrne for Carly. Here's one of my favorites. Someone suggested Simon Baker for Simon. Simon Baker's the guy who was in The Mentalist. Kind of blonde hair. I thought that was a really good one. And someone else suggested Billy Bob Thornton for Todd, which I thought was a great one. I was Googling the photos. I'm like, who are these people? So it was
Billy
hard
Bob
for me
Thornton?
I
He's like her father.
God. Yeah.
So
I just think of Sling Blade.
so what do you guys think? Do
French
you have
fried
ideas?
potatoes.
French fried taters.
So do you have any ideas? Well, who would you go for? I don't know.
I saw Dakota Johnson in it. Probably Carly. See, I don't go by type, like it has to have the same hair color. The person has to have the same hair color.
Oh, I do.
But someone like January Jones for Rin.
Ooh, I like that.
She was in Mad Men. Just someone who's very kind of like a icy, professional exterior, but she could be.
Yeah. I like her. She's good. I like that. So it's fun because it is actually being evaluated right now for TV or movies. So
Cool.
At some point someone might ask me that question. I'm kind of clueless, so I'll take all the help I can get.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll go to your Facebook page and I'm again going to tell everybody to go to your web page. Got a good one.
What's on the website that's kind of fun? I put a whole bunch of extras up there. There's a book of Nutella recipes, including how to make a good Nutella latte, and also some Nutella mousse, which is amazing, which I've made many times before. I wrote this book. I actually have my favorite recipe for Nutella mousse. Had nothing to do with the book before this, and so there's some good recipes up there. It's like a little download where you can get like a bunch of recipes, and also the locations that are in the book, the actual places that the book is set. There's a location guide. People might be interested to know that Cougar Night is a real thing at a real hotel, and I changed the name of the hotel in the book. I made up a new name to protect the innocent. But in the location guide, it actually tells you like the real name of the hotel that was based of, and the locations and which ones are real. And there's also some reading, if you're interested in reading about sexism in Silicon Valley and equality and what's changing. I put a little reading list together as well.
Yeah,
cool. I've been on the ferry ride to Tiburon when I lived there.
It's lovely.
So we're going to do the drawing because Lainey's giving away 2 books from debut authors. So we have one from Allison Hammer, You and Me and Us.
Me and Us.
So let's do that one first.
This book is fabulous. It's a little bit of a tearjerker. Her second book is coming out actually early next year. It's either March or April. Allison is such an amazing writer. She's also really involved with the debuts, but she's also like when I look at debut writers that I can learn from, because I consider them much better writers than me, Allison is in that category. Allison she gets you so absorbed in the book. It's emotional, it's uplifting by the end. It's an amazing, amazing book.
Okay, so this is our winner of Allison Hammer's debut novel.
You and Me and Us.
And that's going to be Dana Austin.
Yay, Dana. She's
Dana
here.
wins a lot.
Dana reads a lot and participates a lot.
She does. I think she has gotten everyone's book. like
Mhm.
from the very beginning.
Thank you, Dana. Like that support means the world to all the debuts. And then the next one is going to be Eddie Budell Tan's book, After Elias, which if you haven't read it yet, this is also one of my favorite books in the last few years, is why I picked it. It is unique and amazing. I actually put my review on BookBub because I had such a hard time describing it. But again, someone that I read this book and I was like, boy, I wish I could write like that. Wow. It just blew my mind in so many different ways. It's emotional. It's a fascinating story. Can I give the 10-second spiel about what it's about?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So the main character in the book, Cohen, is about to get married to his fiance, Elias. And he's on the Mexican island where they're going to get married. And Elias is a commercial pilot. He's flying a plane with 300 plus people, and the plane goes down and everybody dies. That's the opening page of the book, like literally. And the guy who is supposed to get married, he's on this Mexican island where he's supposed to get married. It's funny because that sounds so dramatic, like it's going to be a sad book, but it's actually a really interesting book that's not all sad. He decides to go ahead and do a celebration of life for his fiance, Elias, who's no longer around. And he brings the whole family to the island to celebrate his fiance's life as a celebration. And it all goes a bit crazy from there because people start to question whether he actually deliberately took the plane down. And this fiance is left wondering about this person who was in his life and wondering if he even knew his own fiance. And so you're on this crazy ride as all of this happens. It's like you're in Cohen's head going through all of this. And it's an amazingly well-written book. Most of it takes place in Mexico. It's really poetic. It's beautiful. I loved it.
Okay. And Denise Miller is the winner of that.
Oh, and Denise is here tonight. Yay.
Yay. So I need you all, these two, Dana, I need your addresses. So private message me your addresses so that Lainey can send those to you. Lainey, thank you so much. I really appreciate all that you've done for me during this past month and all that you do for, the debuts, because, we're all doing the best that we can during this crazy year. It's just,
And I appreciate all the people on this group, all the readers on this group who've been supporting the debut authors this year. Because yeah, it's been a crazy, kind of crappy year. And so, yeah, the people in this group who are there, who are participating, who are giving feedback. I've been watching and like putting little comments in here and there all the way through the year, starting from Kian Mai's amazing book, right? The Mountains Sing, also one of my favorite books. So like, thank you. Just huge thank you to everybody in the group. It's so appreciated.
yes. Yeah, I appreciate all the members in this group. I can't believe that we started in March and now it's November. This year's just so weird. And I know November is my book, Forever 51. And please write a review of Lainey's book on, it can be Goodreads or BookBub or Amazon or Bookshop or Barnes & Noble, wherever you purchase the book, because those reviews are so important, because the reviews are discoverability and they don't have to be well written. They just have to be heartfelt and honest and just saying, I love this book. I love this book. I mean, that's all that's all the review could say. And that's all it needs to say. If you want to say more, you can do so. But reviews are so important, because if you like the book, there's someone else out there who's going to like it too. And they may not discover it unless you take that 5 minutes out of your life to do that. So thank you everyone for attending tonight. And I don't even think we've scheduled when we're going to do this for my book, but we'll figure it all out.
It'll be fun.
And thanks, Amy and Nancy, for making it all possible.
Yeah,
right.
thank you
Yes.
so much.
Yes.
Thank you for being behind the scenes, like the Wizard of Oz,
Yeah, they are.
behind the curtain.
Person behind the curtain. Yeah.
That's right. All right.
Good
Thanks,
night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.